An additional 1.5 percentage points increase in the CBN of Nigeria's monetary policy rate, bringing interest rates to 26.25%. Will Nigeria finally get a hold on inflation this year with the latest move? And what is the implication of this rate rise for small business? Good morning. It's another power-packed episode of Business Week. This week, President William Ruto of Kenya is courting international support for Kenya's economic development while he signs a whopping $3.6 billion highway construction agreement, one of many such deals for Kenya's economy. And I also have two venture capital ecosystem heavyweights giving us the latest on African VCs. I'm here to help you catch up as always. I'm Rolake Akinkugbefilani. As always, we're going to take a look at global energy commodities. Brent is up, WTI is up, but during the week, there was a bit of a market rout because interest rates look like they might stay higher for longer in the US. So there are concerns around demand around the world. So we would have seen a much larger increase in Brent, giving some of the Middle East tensions, but worries over global demand are obviously weighing on the market. Nevertheless, a good end to the week for the major commodities. Natural gas is down, but RBOB gasoline still buoyant, up by 83 basis points. Let's take a look at global equities around the world. The all-share index in Nigeria closed the week of trading on Friday at 97,612.51 points, but it was down by 37 basis points. The market's still making sense of the CBN recapitalization directive earlier this year, particularly with banking stocks being the most affected. But nevertheless, a decent end to the week. Market cap still at the 55.2 trillion naira mark. Let's take a look at African equities. Well, generally a good outlook for the key African markets, except the Ghana Stock Exchange in Accra, which stayed a bit flat, unlike last week when we saw the entry of that new mining Australian giant to the Ghanaian market. But Morocco, Kenya, ending the week too on a bullish note, as well as the stock exchange in Johannesburg. Now over to the American market. Quite a lot of activities there on Wall Street this week. All the major indices were up at the end of the week. That's no surprise because you've just seen the results from NVIDIA, a major chip manufacturer. Q1 postings very, very good, which helped to keep the major tech stocks on the NASDAQ Composite Index buoyant, and a whopping 1.06% rise at the end of the week for that index. So North America was looking pretty good at the end of the week. Now let's take a look at my top business picks for the past week. First story here is that the International Congress and Conference Association has ranked South Africa as Africa's most popular destination for business. So South Africa came in first, then you had Rwanda, Kigali, obviously a hot spot for international conferences. Then we had Kenya. Then we had Egypt, of course, Cairo, a popular destination. Nigeria ranked 14th, which, considering some of the infrastructure challenges, wasn't as bad as we expected. But the ranking looked at a range of things such as service, ease of access, as well as the multiplicity of destinations in each country. Next story, Silicon Valley's Scale AI has raised $1 billion in Series F funding, not Series A, B, C, D, E, but F funding from Meta and Amazon. Now, Scale AI is a labeling company that labels images used for autonomous driving. So we still see this AI push around the world, a lot of bullish investor sentiment on the future potential of AI. So essentially, we ain't seen nothing yet. That's what the markets are saying. So congrats to Scale AI there on that major capital raise in Silicon Valley. Microsoft is building a $1 billion geothermal data center in Kenya. Now, William Ruto, as we'll be talking about later in the show, has been courting a lot of international support for Kenya's economic development. So Microsoft is partnering with the UAE AI company called G42, which is building this geothermal data that will add an initial 100 megawatts to Kenya's electricity generation capacity. And part of the idea here is that the country will be able to boost cloud computing capacity, not just in Kenya, but in the East Africa region. So good news for William Ruto, the president. His international efforts clearly reaping some fruit. What else do we have? I talked about NVIDIA earlier. Q1 earnings from NVIDIA looking quite good. I mean, this company's valuation is really now one to follow. NVIDIA, of course, a chip manufacturer, taking advantage of the AI boom. And finally, last story there is Argentina's peso has fallen to an all-time low. Javier Milei, of course, when he came in last year, moved to devalue the peso to unify the black market and the parallel market. And of course, that's seeing some challenges for the peso. We had a bit of stability in the initial days of his term, but now the peso is now at an all-time low to about 1,280 peso to the dollar. We'll be keeping an eye on emerging markets like Argentina in the coming weeks. That's it for my business topics. Let's take a look at other stories from around the world, starting with Nigeria. Nigeria's economy expanded less quickly than anticipated in the first quarter due to unfavorable weather conditions and a steep decline in the value of the naira. That's according to new figures from the National Bureau of Statistics. Now, in the 3 months ending in March, the GDP of the country grew by 2.98% annually, as opposed to 3.46% in the preceding quarter, as figures were made public by the NBS on Friday. The Central Bank of Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee has increased the benchmark interest rate by 150 basis points to 26.25% from 24.75%. The governor of the CBN, Yemi Cardoso, stated this at a press briefing following the 295th MPC meeting of the bank earlier in the week. Furthermore, the bank retained the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45% and put the asymmetric corridor around the MPR at plus 100 and minus 300 basis points. Meanwhile, the CBN has mandated that Bureau de Change operators submit fresh online license applications with the updated regulatory criteria within the next 6 months. This was revealed in an updated set of guidelines for BDC activities, which was signed by Haruna Mustafa, the bank's Director of Financial Policy and Regulation. Kenya's Highways Authority and U.S. infrastructure investment manager Everstrong Capital have signed a $3.6 billion agreement to build a 440-kilometer highway between the capital and port city of Mombasa, the company said on Thursday. A bigger highway between Mombasa and Nairobi has been on the wish list of successive governments aiming to ease congestion on the busy road to and from the port. The project anticipates attracting investments totaling $3.6 billion sourced from international investors, development agencies, pension funds, and an exceptionally large number of Kenyan private investors, Everstrong said in a statement. The deal coincides with President William Ruto's visit to the U.S., the first such state visit by a leader from sub-Saharan Africa since 2008. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has expressed concern over substantial rises in living costs being a problem to a lot of people as persistent inflation dents President Joe Biden's standing with voters ahead of November's election. Prices for housing and everyday goods were still high for many voters, Yellen acknowledged, despite strong wage growth in recent months. They see it when they shop for food. They see it in terms of rentals with higher mortgage rates. It's tough for young people who would like to buy a house to enter the market, Yellen said in an interview with the Financial Times on Thursday. The comments from the U.S. most senior economic official come as polls show Biden continuing to trail his Republican rival, Donald Trump, with just over 5 months until the presidential election. Microsoft unveiled a new line of AI-enabled personal PCs on Wednesday as it works quickly to incorporate the cutting-edge technology into all of its products in an effort to rival Apple and Alphabet. CEO Satya Nadella of Microsoft announced what the company calls Copilot Plus PCs during an event held on its Redmond, Washington campus. He stated that a number of manufacturers, including Acer and Asus Tech Computer, would sell these computers in addition to Microsoft. The new processors, which will start at $1,000 and ship on June 18, can tackle more AI jobs without requiring cloud data centers. And finally, according to data released by Destatis on Friday, the German economy grew in the first quarter as predicted, thanks to a rise in exports and investment. Compared to the 0.5% decline in the 3 months prior, the GDP grew by 0.2% sequentially in the first quarter. The April 30th flash estimate was verified by the Stats Office. Well, that's it for the market roundup and top business stories of the week.